So I'm just up here now at the top of this, well, some people are saying it was called Warrior Hill, but it's called Ringwood now. You can't go around the entire perimeter, I don't think, on footpaths. You get as far as the road. I haven't been around the far side yet, but I've just spoke to a guy with a house, and I could have found Castle Hill, but he helped me point it out. So Castle Hill is over there. You probably won't be able to see it. Can you see where that branch is there in that tree? It's just there, and you can make out sort of, if the tower wasn't on there, you would still be able to see like the platform bit at the top, just over there. If Castle Hill was actually built and raised up to that exact height, I don't think it's coincidence. You can just see here from there. If it was any lower, you wouldn't be able to see the top level of it. I don't think that's a coincidence. Some people, I'm not the first person who thought that this hill's got some significance, because there's been some university dissertations and actual studying work indicating this hill with thinking along the same lines that I've been. The fact that it was flat on the top and it's got so steep sides, and this like steepness is really hard to get up. I think that, and this is based on actually going to other sites and looking at other sites. When you've got Cissbury Ring and Chanctonbury Ring near each other, you can see one hillfort from the other. Also, you've got Oswestry, then a hill at the side of Oswestry, then you've got Uffington Camp, and then you've got like the symbolic Dragon's Hill next to it. I actually think that there is some symbology in that, and I actually would even tie into it as well, that Dunelm, that Cop Hill over at Meltham. It's not a coincidence that there's this hill that happens to be in the shape of a very high. It's just the right size to have a hillfort on the top of it, and it's even actually better defended than Castle Hill is. And you can exactly just see the level of the top of Castle Hill from here. It can't be a coincidence. And the fact that they actually let them build houses on here, and the fact that I think that when they had some commemoration, some royal commemoration, they actually had a fire on here as well, and a fire on Castle Hill. I think this ties into my other evidence and the other studies that I've been doing, looking at an upper Hopton by the Freemasons' Arms, when that view has been blocked off by the pub getting taken over and turned into flats, so you can't go there and look anymore, and they've now put a nice parking place where you can see the beautiful position of Castle Hill from the best view. Really, it's ridiculous why you want to look at it from that view, why the council won't want to. I actually strongly believe that there's been all the things that are important to the history of this island before the conquests, like, the previous inhabitants and the previous cultures, even with the stone circles and the chambers and that. I actually believe that the current conquering and dominating forces have always wanted to seek, whether they've not blatantly gone out and done it, kind of sort of more in secret, or with saying that they've got different motives when they've got other motives of their own. I actually think that because they've been wanting to try and build on Castle Hill, built on here, I think this is actually as important, if not more, because I actually don't think you'd have such an amazing, brilliant hillfort. It makes sense now. It actually makes sense that if when you've got Uffington, and then you've got the White Horse, and then you've got Wayland Smithy, you've got all those three sites, it creates so much attention. Then you've got Cissbury Hill, which is, they say it's the biggest man-made hill, and then you've got West Kennet Longbarrow next to it. You've got all this attention to these sites down south, but when you think of it, if you figured this into it, right, and actually acknowledge and recognise that, oh yeah, well, this was used to live on the top as well, one of the local tribes, as well as Castle Hill, then suddenly you've got, the symbolism in York. They've got that little bit of a mound in York with a fort on it. You see, in 1066, William the Conqueror, they built after they got given over to De Lacy, they built that little Murfield Castle, which is a small mound. Why did they have to build that when they'd already got the fort up there? It doesn't make sense. I actually think that this I think this is as important and significant as Castle Hill, even if this is natural. And you know, I don't suggest that anyone would make this, because I think the Cissbury Hill one took longer to make than Stonehenge, they were saying. I still think that the fact that they're not even acknowledging this, you know, it doesn't need any earthworks around the edge for people to camp or live on it, you know. And the thing is, if you go to Uffington, they've got that little Dragon Hill which hasn't got any earthworks around it or fortifications, and apparently prior to the conquest, Castle Hill didn't have that significant earthworks around it, but it was still an important site. I actually think that this hill is significant, because the fact you can just see, you know, you wouldn't need it any higher or lower. It's just the perfect, it's absolutely perfect just to see it over the top, exactly. And to be honest, the view from around here, you can't really see the view now because of the trees, and you can't really see the hill that well because of all the houses around it. But it's actually it's a really good view around here, and I think that this hill would look pretty cool if you could see it properly. I might actually try and get the drone guy to fly over it. If I go around that way any further, you get to the road. I'm going to have a little bit of a walk around and see what I can find, what else I can find, but I think it is significant. To me, by going to different sites, and just the proximity to Castle Hill, the fact that, you know, that site's there and this is here, and then you've got the river, and there is a little river near this one, even though it's been moved a little bit. And then you've got it just all seems to me to make sense and fit together, and I think that it's a bit of a cover-up, this. I think this hill it's not got us from far away, you can't see, you know, it's not like really beautiful from far away, because this one's in a bit of a valley, but Castle Hill is, and it gets a lot less significance than what I think it deserves. And if you figure this into it, suddenly it actually, and the fact, you know, the fact that apparently they were saying there was a stone circle up at Crosslamore at Galka, so I actually think that with this not ignored, with this actually fully recognised and acknowledged, it suddenly, I think it jumps up more important than Uffington and Cissbury Hill. The fact that they just happen to have the long barrow still there, we don't know we don't know if there were any near here. And the fact is that the shape of Castle Hill, anyways, is like a giant long barrow anyway. Just not that one. It's not one that you go inside chambered. You can actually go on top of it. It does look like a long barrow, and it is like a long barrow from far away. And this is just like a massive, huge tumulus. And the fact that it's really central in the middle of the island, and there's the river. This particular river goes all the way to the sea, and it's quite an important river actually. And this is just right in the middle of the whole island. Even it's quite well centrally placed, you know, if you think from Scotland to the south coast anyway. And I've been looking into the Welsh coast at some of the chambered cairns, and there aren't actually any inland at all. They're all sort of around the coast, all the edge of the coast. But the fact that you actually you can get from here out on the River Goole and go to the ocean at Hull. So I do think this is really important, and I just can't believe that the council let them build on it. And actually, these houses aren't that old. And the fact that they had a fire on here, why would you have a fire on here unless you're wanting to make a point out of rubbish in it or something? And when you tie in other evidence, I think that there's something going on in regards to covering up as history and past. I think this side is where the quarry was, because it's all dug out here. There was a quarry on one side of it. This must have been it, but it's not been quarried that much. And I mean, it wouldn't take that long to quarry this bit. I mean, you must, if you go to any quarry, then they do a lot of quarrying, and it's been quarried, but I wouldn't have said it's been quarried for long, because it wouldn't take that long to quarry this much out of it, I don't think. I think that quarrying was excuse to have a dig. Oh, we'll have a bit of a dig into the side of it, see if we can find out. And he sort of gave up, didn't sort of get anywhere with it really. There's even some trees growing back since then. Didn't take long for those trees to grow, look at that. There's trees growing in where they've quarried it already. I think they wanted to have a little bit of a sniff around and see if you could have a dig into it, see if you're up buried. Beautiful views all the way around, and there's flat playing fields there, and this side's. I think that the thing is, you can't actually appreciate and see the views because of all the trees, which is usually wanting to save trees and grow more trees, but I judging by the size of the top of it and the fact that it's always been flat, it would be ludicrous and insane to suggest that it wasn't occupied, you know, when something to do with Castle Hill. And the other thing is this, right? I've been to a lot of hill forts in this country and a lot of ancient sites, right? And I admit, right, at Maiden Castle, it is bloody, the sides are massive trenches up and down and steep, but the thing is, it's next to the ocean, and the rest of the landscape around it is not necessarily that difficult terrain. It's not right next to the sea, but it's still Dorchester, right? It's not far. And then when you go to Uffington, places like that, the actual place itself is not that difficult to get to, you know. But the thing is, right, with this here, right, you wouldn't need, it's actually so steep and difficult to get up it that you just wouldn't need any earthworks around the top anyway, because it's just so, and I know what the Merfield Castle, the little, when the Normans built those Motte and Baileys, those domes, Domesday Book domes, it's so steep to get up it. It's so small actually. That little hill is so small for that Motte and Bailey, but it's so hard to walk up it. I've never been to a site ever that is so hard to walk up it, and it's not even as big as, it's probably only about as big as a house. It's about the size of a house. Now this is, you know, this is, you know, it's got houses on it. At the moment, they've built an entire housing estate on it, right? And the steepness of it, compared to any other site I've been to get up it, it's just got that. And when you go to York, and they've got the fortress on the hill at York, which is kind of Motte and Bailey style, it's just got that feel, that steep slope feeling to it, that I think that it would have been, you know, it would have been extremely formidable and difficult to attack it anyway without needing any earthworks around it. And the fact that pre-conquest, you know, Castle Hill didn't have that advanced earthworks, only very simple basic ones. I think that there were two sites, and I think that's very significant to Cissbury Ring and the other Hillfort, Chanctonbury, whatever it's called. And you know, when you go to Old Oswestry, and then there's the hill next to it, and then you go Uffington, and then they've got Dragon Hill, and the thing, you know, they've got this like doubling up. It just, to me, it seems to make sense. And the fact that why they wouldn't want to mention it, I don't think that they'd want to mention it, you know. And the fact, this is another thing I've just thought, we've been looking into the meanings of the words, right? And you know the meanings of the words, you know, like Cambodunum, and the Romans' Latin culture named camel because it's got a hump. Camel's got a hump, right? And the shape of a hump is like, it carries water in it, a camel, and it's got like a hump shape. Now they're saying that Cambodunum means the fort by the bend in the river, right? The thing is, if you figure in the two forts, a fort here and Castle Hill, that's two. And you can get camels that have got one hump and two humps. So, you know, it would be a clever way to name it when you know in your mind that, you know, if you've, you know, if you're Romans and you're conquering, you know, North Africa and everywhere, and you've got all this vocabulary and language like we do in today's world, and we know all about these different animals, lions, tigers, all this, because the Romans used to use them in the, you know, they used to have the games and the gladiators and all that. It would be clever to name something. The word camel is like camel, Cambodunum, the fort by bend in the river. There is a bend in the river at Huddersfield, which I've pointed out on the map. And the other thing is that if there were two forts, like two humps and a camel, you know, like one hump, two humps, like two hills, two forts near a river, right? And and there's actually a little stream, there's a little stream or river near here, and what's been diverted, but it goes close to this. The exact path of it's been changed, but there was a watermill as well, and it's actually quite beautiful on this one as well. This is a great view. And the fact that they had a fire on it for one of the royal commemorations seems to me like more vandalism and rubbishing, you know, stamping out the ancient history. I think that it's been rubbish, this site, and they've tried to cover it up and forget about it, and that's why they built houses on it as well. I don't know how Kirklees Council allowed them to build houses on this. It's ridiculous. So you know, what archaeological evidence is there? Well, you know, there's not been any archaeology, and there's unlikely to be now. It's almost like they blocked it off, so you couldn't do proper archaeological study of it because they banged houses on it, and then they're having a pig farm on it. It's kind of like a bit of another kind of like knock, isn't it? So I actually think there's a very vindictive and vicious culture in this country by the conquering class of trying to lie about, rubbish and censor the actual history of the culture of the people who came before them, because, you know, once you've been conquered, you know, even though they've got to try and pretend and come across like they're interested in history, and, you know, you've got the university that want to study it for legitimate purposes, but I think there's always an air and flavour of the fact that, you know, writing a lot of lies about it, and depending on who your affiliations are with as an archaeologist and what your intelligence level is, you know, anyone with any intelligence of sites around this country, and the fact that it just happens to be that there's two places next to each other, and from the top of this one you can exactly see the platform on the top of the other one, both strategic next to the river, and then when you think of that Dunelm place as well, Cop Hill, which is by the Pennines. But there's one thing that they're figuring out and they're not wanting to talk about, which is the resources on the moors as well, you know. But then we have to get into religion, we have to get into all the other sites, we have to get into Newgrange, we have to get into all the Scottish sites and figure it all into that, you know. There's a lot of different subjects of study, particularly subjects that are currently illegal, like studying psilocybin and all that type of things, you know, the origin of religion, pre-Christianity, all that, which they don't want you to. Really, we've been banned from studying the origins of religion through usage of the well-known and acknowledged religious, you know, ritualistic sacrament, things like that. But they'll let us study them when it's, you know, South America or Siberia. But when it's this country, it's almost like, you know, we've got the church now, and, you know, we've got these symbols, and that's it. And, you know, you don't really want to look into it any further than that, unless it's just fairy tale folklore, which is kind of been pseudo science and not a legitimate field of study, unless you're the Royal Imperial College and you have to have a special license. Do you know what I mean? So the views from here is absolutely amazing around here. I think that this is really, really important and significant. And, you know, I'm not too sure if that's the original river, because a woman said that the river's been changed course, but I don't know if it's this part of it or another part of it. Look at this, it's so steep. It's just so steep. The area is a surface area on the top of this. There are hills and there are hills. And there are positions of hills and positions of hills. And the position of this hill, with this view around it, in proximity to Castle Hill, with this steepness sides to get up, I don't think you would have needed any fortifications around the earthworks on top of it. And the fact that it's flat. Oh, you know, how long is it? It's not like it was, you know, made flat recently. It's kind of always been. That itself is evidence of habitation, is it not? And you don't even have to find any coins on it or anything to say, oh, well, you know, why is it nice and level on the top of it? That seems to be the evidence to me. So the river now, it does. This stream or little stream runs directly right at the bottom of the one side of here. So you're saying that it didn't used to run right by it, or it did run right by it here, but not at a different part of it. They've got all these trees with the roots all hanging out where this river thing is. It's almost kind of like, you know, half of the roots of his ancestry and past have been taken away, but there's half of it kind of still there, you know. It's kind of a bit like that. It's a bit like the hill actually being here and being flat, you know. And then being so near the other side. It's just like Castle Hill itself actually being there, and this, and you know, it's kind of like all being trying to eroded away or trying to be covered up. But yet it's kind of blatantly obvious, you know. I think there's something in that camel, because they got the word to carry water for river, and camel carries water. So you name a camel, oh, this will name this animal that carries water, like a river carries water, and rivers have got bends in, so it's like got like hump shape on the back, so we'll call it a camel. You can get camels with one hump and camels with two humps, with two different types. So we'll call this Cambodunum, the fort by the bend in the river, if it is called that. So steep there. You would not need any, it would just be pointless. To be honest, right, thinking of Maiden Castle and Oswestry. Oswestry's pretty much, when you go to Oswestry, they're pretty bloody steep, the sides. Even Oswestry, and then when you go to Maiden Castle, like, and you're in the V channel of it, you're like, whoa, it's massive. It's a big hill fort, that. If this was, you see, if they lived on the top of this, and it was so steep around the edges that, you know, you're not gonna need all those V shapes, you know, with the ripples going off it, and you know, it wouldn't necessitate having those. It would be, you know, I don't know whether it might be a little bit smaller than the surface area of Maiden Castle, but it's big, and that would put it, you know, Maiden Castle's only, the size of it makes it more significant, whereas other hill forts like Cissbury Ring, it's more to do with specific, we know what they were used for, like, you know, this is for getting flint from, you know. So if you do figure our area into something important for resources, if you've got a religious order such as the Druids, and if they've got, you know, if they're sourcing certain things for, you know, sending them out to the other members of their order and into do religious things, then it would figure into being religious based as well, I think, as well as just, you know, because apparently it was meant to be the major tribe anyway. I think it all kind of makes sense. Then you got the Pennines. You got the Pennines to come over, or on the river. These huge trees. It's like, never been here before. So I don't know if this stream actually came past you or not. Someone's saying it would be moved, but that was difficult to go down there. It's just really wet and all slidey mud. I had to run down into that tree and then just stop myself with the tree. Okay, so it's not actually anywhere near as big as Maiden Castle. So that's the top, the living area on top is only that big in comparison to Maiden Castle. So with the base of the hill, it's only about with the base of the hill as well. You'd fit about 3 of them in Maiden Castle, I think, something like that. Maybe Maiden Castle's a bit more. So Maiden Castle is a lot bigger, because Maiden Castle, the area, and that's 727 meters. Yeah, so Maiden Castle's 727 meters around on top, and this is only 179, because this, where the trees are now, is where the embankment is. But it's really, really, really steep though. And actually, you know, the land surrounding Maiden Castle it's not that hard to actually get to where Maiden Castle is. So you've got all these different layers of walls around Maiden Castle. If this was lived on by the Brigantes tribe, then why didn't they make loads of waves around it? Well, I don't think they needed to, because the height of it's so high and steep that it doesn't need multiple multivalets. It's actually so steep that it's actually really, really difficult to get up. So you won't actually need any fortifications around the top of it because it's that steep to get to. And what makes it even more so obvious to me is its proximity to Castle Hill, Hillfort, because Castle Hill's there. Castle Hill's there, and if you just follow it in a straight line forward, then it's there. So, and the shape of Castle Hill, it's pointing directly at it. Even the shape of the hill fort points at it. And the weird thing is that Castle Hill is like being on a giant ship or a boat, and the bow of the ship's meant to be the front. So, if you did fire an arrow from a bow, it's called the bow of a ship, it would go straight at it. And all this weird mystery from Mirfield, there's that strange Mirfield Castle mound after 1066, and then you've got this Robin Hood's grave in Mirfield, when all this mystery to do with if you fired an arrow and where he was buried, where the arrow landed, is going to be buried. Now, it does look like it looks like a huge tumulus, a huge burial mound. It's not as big as Maiden Castle. It's only smaller than a third of the size of Maiden Castle, but it's big. And oddly enough, Castle Hill is it's like the front of Castle Hill is off the bow of a ship. Now, when you stood on the top of there, you can see the deck of Castle Hill over the ridge. You can just see it. Obviously, you can see it now because of the tower, but if the tower wasn't on there, you can it's just high enough where you can actually see the top of it. And I actually think that it was worked a bit so it was exactly that height. And the fact of two hill forts being close to each other, when they're operating together, I think it's more significant. And then there's that Dunelm at Meltham, which is quite unusual. And it's starting to make me think of, Cissbury Hill, and those two hill forts are just invisibility of each other, So I actually think that is significant. And true, it might not be as big as Maiden Castle, but it's damn steep. And I've actually been to Maiden Castle, and I've been to Old Oswestry as well. And it's actually, it's the same sort of size. I'll actually measure Old Oswestry now. So it's actually a bit smaller than Old Oswestry actually, but it's a lot steeper than Oswestry, and it looks, when you look at it, it's got trees on it now, but it's really high up and steep actually, and you don't actually need the fact that it's higher and steeper than Oswestry. You wouldn't need all the extra multivaults around it either. And it's actually quite close to water supply. And the fact that it's close to Castle Hill as well, Oswestry's actually got this other hill sort of next to it, opposite it. It's got this other hill there. Actually, Cissbury Ring is there's 722 metres on top. Cissbury Ring's actually similar sort of size to Maiden Castle. I didn't know that. It's actually quite big. You see, they're living on there, Mine Flint. But at Maiden Castle, they weren't actually, the resource that they were using in that area is not actually on the hill fort, but it is at Cissbury Ring. I've actually never zoomed out to actually see where. Oh, it's right next to the coast. So the thing with this, you see, it's Worthing. So Flint's coming out of Worthing. It's also near the coast, like Maiden Castle is. Our hill forts are access to the sea by a river, though. Where's the other one then? Where's that hold on. So from that Chanctonbury Ring hill fort to Cissbury Ring is 4 kilometres. And Cissbury is a lot bigger than the other one. Actually, I've not actually had a look at the other one. It's quite small. clear that measurement and I'll see how much it measures. 140. So this Chanctonbury ring is actually a little bit smaller than the one that I'm looking at here, but it's quite close to it, that's interesting. 4 kilometers. Hold on a minute. Right, so it's 3.5 kilometers. It's 3.5 kilometers. So these are approximately the same distance between each other as Cissbury Ring is from the Chanctonbury Ring one. Similar, 3.5 kilometers and 4 kilometers. And you can only just see Castle Hill from the top of here, just because of the. I think that Castle Hill was made a certain height, so you can actually only just see it from here. So obviously you can see it now because they've built a tower on it. You know. Now the thing with Cissbury Ring is that it is a resource of flint being supplied to Britain, and it's right next to the ocean, right? Now the thing with these two sites is that we've got this Brigantes tribe in the area, and then we've got the river at Huddersfield. There's a bend in the river, fought by the bend in the river, that goes to the sea. You can go to the ocean at Hull, right? But this is right in the middle of the island. Now, what resources we've got near us is another subject to get onto, you know, and there are entire websites to do with that. If you want to talk about, you know, what you can get in the Pennines, you know, there are a lot of things you've got to know and be interested in and to study to know what these sites are for and to get into them. You know, I think this is very, very, very significant, right? And also, I don't clear this measurement, so Castle Hill is 245 metre, and that's 180. So Castle Hill's bigger. I definitely think there's something in this, and the thing that university students who have written dissertations on the local history have mentioned this place and talked about it. Apparently, on an old map, it was marked as a warrior's tomb. It looks like a tumulus. It's flat on top. It's very, very steep sides to get up. You know, it's actually I would say that it's more difficult to get. If you're going to attack somewhere, it's harder to get up there, even without any fortifications around the top of it, than it is to get up Old Oswestry. You know, it's a lot easier to get up Old Oswestry than it is to get up there, because I know, because I used to go to Old Oswestry every week. So, you know. So this is Chanctonbury Ring, right? Got 3D maps on it now, going around. It's actually got trees growing on this site. Never mind the site that I'm looking at by us, right? So there's Chanctonbury Ring, and then here's Cissbury Ring, which is it's about 4 kilometers away. It doesn't look it's not super high, Hillfort. And then here we have this Roundwood, which is it's really steep sides. I think it's steeper sides than any of those other Hillforts. It's also covered in wood now, and it's a shame that we've got all these buildings around it. And then so from there you go, there it is, look. From here, the fact that they're both together, and the thing is, if it was so important, and the thing with this site is, on the landscape in certain views, it is very, very significant. I actually think that it is significant. So what I think's interesting is this, right? And I'm not for a second saying that I'm right, because I ain't got any evidence to prove it at the moment. But if I may propose or suggest, right, at least enough for someone to say, oh yeah, well, you know, that's interesting, maybe we could think about it or even look into it, right? So I've been watching a couple of videos, right, about, you know, Robin Hood buried in Mirfield. There's a grave there, right? And apparently, if you go onto YouTube and you type in Robin Hood's grave, there's quite a few people actually got videos and have been to it within the last year or two, right? They just went on the road near the Three Nuns, the one that goes onto Cooper Bridge, and they just went up through the woods and they went up and videoed it and showed the grave through the woods and everything. And you can see that I've seen it before on TV, but I've never actually been to it. And I'm from Mirfield, and they've got this kind of wall and fence around it now, but it's just a stone and it's got some writing on it, I think, and apparently there was no body found under it. But on the stone, I can't remember if it's the 1100s or the 1200s. It says here lies Robert, and it's got his last name, whether it's Loxley or whatever it says, and then it says that, you know, there was no good as archer as he or whatever, and the whole myth around the Robin Hood legend, right? You know, like he shot an arrow when he died, and that's where he was going to be buried, and all this. Well, it's always, you know, it's meant to have all taken part around Sherwood Forest and Nottingham, but back then Sherwood Forest was really big and extensive, and it was meant to stretch as far as up here to, you know, Barnsley and Huddersfield was all part of Sherwood Forest. Now there was meant to be a nunnery or a religious sect or order on the land where the Three Nuns pub is now, or just behind there, right? Now that's apparently where one of his, you know, his relatives were, and he got bloodlet there or whatever. Now that Robin Hood story is set sort of, you know, 100 years or two after the Norman conquest, you know, the Battle of 1066, right? Now, being from Mirfield, right, and being from Mirfield and being in the immediate vicinity of that mound, right, in Mirfield, there's a mound, right? And when you're little, you don't really correlate dates and events and history. You know, it's just a mound, you know, and you know they always say, oh, you know, it's an ancient site, but until you get a little bit older, then you'll know, you know, it was a Motte and Bailey castle, and they've got the village stocks there. So you've always got this sort of sense of, you know, ancient history and magic, you know, like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, all that sort of feel and vibe to it. That little bit of Mirfield with the village stocks and then the old hill, because when you look at it, and you don't imagine it actually as a Motte and Bailey castle, when you just look at it and it's a mound, it carries this air of, this sense of, you know, sort of, you know, Cissbury Hill or an even older or ancient monument like some of these burial mounds they've got in the east of England, you know, when they find all these chariots under them and things like that. Actual burial mounds, whether Vikings or Saxon ones or even older, you know, it's always had that feel to it, but they tell us that, you know, I don't think it's ever been core sampled, but from the records say that it was a Norman fort built in Mirfield Castle, and it's near the river, right, where there's a little ford there. Now, it's not unusual to think of Castle Hill being a significant, you know, it's a significant site in England, Castle Hill. It's in a beautiful valley, it's a beautiful hill fort, it's not far from that Mirfield Castle, right? It stands out in the landscape, it's very picturesque and beautiful, And it's not only a Neolithic site, but, you know, it's been in use all through different parts of history, particularly in 1066 when they got licensed to fortify it. Now, the thing about Castle Hill is this, right? Now, it's when you're on Castle Hill, however it was before 1066, right? However the layout of it was and whatever it looked like and whatever it was like to be on there, right? The fortifications that are currently there and the current form it's in, or what's left of it, when you go onto it, right, and when you are stood on it, right, looking out, it is, without doubt, it's just like being on a big boat. The way it's shaped, right, and the feel of it, it literally is like a big boat. I also think it kind of is a little bit like an eye looking up to the stars. You know, if you think of stargazing at night, it's also kind of like an eye looking up at the stars. But more than that, it is definitely like being on a big ship or a boat. And the directions of a boat anyway, you've got starboard on a boat, which is looking at the stars for direction and navigation anyway, right? So you've got starboard and you look up at the stars anyway. Now you've got the aft, the stern and the bow. And you spell bow like a bow, like bow, right? Now, and once when it's bent at each side of the ship, it is like the shape of one side of the ship is like a bow. When you bend a bow anyway, it is like a bow, you know. So, but the front of the boat's called the bow, right? Now, I don't think that it's, you know, completely ridiculous to raise a question and say, that's significant because this hill fort is like a big ship and one of the directions on the ship is a bow, right? And the shape of the hill fort being, it's not like there's a lot of rectangular hill forts and odd shaped hill forts, you know, it's very much like the shape of a long barrow. And the funny thing is, it's even more than being exactly like the shape of a very big long barrow, and it's shaped like the bicocket hats that we're known for portraying the Robin Hood fashion, wearing those bicocket hats, right? So immediately, the shape and style of Castle Hill, it conjures up images and pictures through its form and shape of the Robin Hood hat, you know, and it can't be ignored. And he was meant to be an archer, you know, with a bow. And another thing to do with that shape and form is the bow of a ship, which is the front anyway. Now, whether or not the Robin Hood tale is true or not, or whether it's exaggerated, or whether there was a Robin Hood or not, you know, it's no coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that you've got this story that he shoots an arrow, you know, when you know, and wherever it lands is going to be buried. Now, it's worth looking into or questioning this, right? When you're on Castle Hill, if you think of the word bow or bow spelt the same, right, and if you were on a ship. And if you had, you know, a very, you know, like if you fired an imaginary bow, right, and if you could fire it with your imagination, you know, not just like it go like 100 yards and then just flop down or whatever, but if you could, you know, a reasonable distance, you know, I'm not talking like, you know, to the North Pole or, you know, to Scotland or whatever, but, you know, just generally, if you could project it out from Castle Hill, and I know I'm talking with this map on, right, now, you've got Castle Hill itself, the hill, when you align it up so it's symmetrical this way, it's like that. And the way that it got put by when William the Conqueror licensed to fortify it, it's actually the point, the pinnacle of the front of the shape goes off to this left-hand side here, right? It doesn't go with the exact symmetry of the hill. Now, if you actually fired in your mind an imaginary, you know, powerful arrow, right, and you went off to the other side, it would actually go to Mirfield, and you could draw a line to Mirfield to that little barrow, you know, the little, not barrow, the mound, right, which is what they built next to the river when they did that Mirfield Castle, right? But, right, this is the thing, right, what I've been thinking today, because every time I drive past it, I'm always thinking, right, if you fire out from your mind, right, straight with the line of the hillfort being symmetrical forward from the hillfort, right, a reasonable distance, right, you know, and you go straight forward from Castle Hill, right, and if you go straight forward, right, actually, I just nearly put it in 3D mode then, and I was trying to do that earlier. So, if you go straight out from Castle Hill, right, what's straight in front of it actually is this, right, which is only in Waterloo, which is not that far away. Oh, there we go. We've got a bit of 3D. So, there's this very strange land feature, right? And I want to find out if it's natural or whether it was man-made, right? At the moment, there's houses on the top of it, and I've never been up there, but it's a very steep hill going up to it, right? And it's called Woodedge Avenue, and they're quite modernish houses. They're not really old, so it's not that long ago when, I don't know why they gave permission for it, because it was a forest and wooded area, but they've built houses on there, right? Now, the strange thing about this is this, right? I've actually not been up there, but I've walked on all the roads that are around it to get places, right, when I've been going to Kirkheaton or wherever, right? This hill, if it's natural, right, it's extremely steep. It's so steep, like really steep, extremely difficult to get up it. And it is quite a roundish sort of shape. Now, the area on top of it, where the houses are built, is kind of like around the same sort of surface area of what you get on a hillfort. Anyway, when you look at it, you know, how long have the trees been on there? You know, it doesn't take long for trees to grow and come back again, yeah? I would like, you know, no one talks about it, but when you look at it, right, when I look at it and look at the steepness of it and the shape of it, this hill here, right, it's almost just stands out like wow, look at that. But it's almost like sort of ignored or forgotten about. And this is the thing. If you go to the mound at Mirfield Castle, right, next to the parish church, I've actually been up to the top of it, and I climbed up it once, and I walked up it, and it's so steep. It's not that high, right? I've seen bigger mounds. It's not Cissbury Hill, you know, I'll tell you that. It's nothing like Cissbury Hill in size. It's a lot smaller, but it's so steep to get up it, right? And when I walked up it, it actually kind of hurt my knee because it was really steep. And I'm like, wow, this is really hard to climb up it. But when I got onto the top of it, I'm like, how could you have had like a wooden tower on the top of this? There's hardly any room on the top of it. I'm like, I found it difficult to believe that you could actually build, you know, like a Motte and Bailey and an actual wooden tower, lookout tower on the top of it, because, like, to be honest, when I looked at it, I'm like, you know, when I was up there, I'm like, there's not much space up here at all. But just the angles of it, the steepness of it, definitely made to stop people getting up there. Very difficult to get up. Now, whenever I go on this road on Waterloo, which is on a daily basis, every time I look over at this hill here, right, it's the steepness of it. And I walk on this road at the back as well to go to Kirkheaton sometimes. And there's like woodland all up it. And I look at the steepness of it, and it just makes me think of that Mirfield Castle hill, even though it's little, because it's the similar. I'm like, wow, that is so steep that if you wanted to get up there quick, it would be really difficult because it's just so steep. And the shape of it, I'm like, natural hills don't normally have this, you know, kind of it's just got this kind of roundness to it where, to me, it looks like it's been shaped. When they say that, you know, Cissbury Hill is one of the biggest man-made mounds ever, and apparently it took longer to build Cissbury Hill than it took to build Stonehenge, right? It just, to me, thinks that, you know, we've got this river that goes all the way, you know, to Hull, to the sea. We've got this hill fort, which is absolutely beautiful and amazing from certain views, and it's really underrated and underappreciated. And yet, there's this hill here, right, and no one talks about it. No one, you know, there's no archaeological interest in it whatsoever. We don't know if it's man-made or whether it's natural, you know. And to me, it just looks, it's got this kind of like, you know, burial mounds would normally never be that big unless, you know, it's actually bigger than a Cissbury Hill. And I'm just wondering, I want to know about this thing, because if there ever was, you know, if you had something like Cissbury Hill or even bigger, right? If there was, you get all these places in the east of England where you get these proper burial mounds where there's actually all these things buried in them like chariots, you know. It seems to me that if there ever was anything that, you know, can we think of anything in history that resonates or comes to mind when you think of shooting a bow to somewhere where there's something where you're going to be buried or die? Now, Castle Hill is like the bow of a ship, and if you fired from it, it would go straight to here. And it's like a massive burial mound, you know, a lot bigger than, you know, the mound in Mirfield, which is a Norman castle, you know. So I'm just curious about this hill for those reasons, you know. Could you know, and I want to find out about it. I'm just curious about it. Why did they let them build houses on it? When were the houses built? You know, is it acknowledged as a natural hill? Was it man-made from some past quarrying somewhere or something? Why, you know, has it even been excavated? Did they, you know, do they even know? Because as far as I'm concerned, they haven't even, there's no questions, there's no interest in knowing about it. And obviously, clearly, when they built the houses, they didn't find anything. Also, they might have said, oh, we found this or that. But it just seems so interesting. And the thing is, if you were the Brigantes tribe, and if you had Castle Hill, and if there was important things going on in the area, maybe there was, you know, more than one thing in the area. Because when you get Cissbury Ring Hillfort, you've got two Hillforts mining flint, you know. Because I've been interested in that Meltham Cop hill over at Meltham as well. So I'm just, you know, I'd like to basically, right, I'd like to find out about this land feature and find out if anyone knows anything about it. And maybe you could debunk my curiosity by saying, oh yeah, it's this or that, you know, it is natural, and, you know, has it ever been looked at, you know, and if it was some sort of huge, massive mound, and if it did have some prehistoric significance or relevance, maybe they didn't want us to know about it and might have covered it up. It just seems very strange and interesting, you know, and also, you know, it's very, very interesting that they've got that they decided to build that normal. Why did they need to build that fort at Mirfield Castle, you know, that little Motte and Bailey one at Mirfield Castle, you know, when they did Castle Hill? If they did Castle Hill, you know, they've got that, you know, so, you know, it interests me. So, you know, I'd like to find out more about it, you know. I can't give it onto... I think you pull down to go 3D, don't you? It's not really showing a very good 3D image of it at the moment. So, you know, I'd like to find out about it.